known on Zen, and we've got Callum Young on new. Now, these are both two very flexible players. I've seen them over the years perform on very different decks. So we've seen Jake's perform very well on Azalea, getting to the top 8 of a Pro Tour. As Callum Young, I've seen him, he was an Icelander back in the day. I've seen him on Victor. I've certainly had chats with him about Levia. So really, we've got two here who are very flexible. I think Jake has generally been on the aggro matchup, so I'm not surprised to see him on the Zen. But let's see how they do now.
Absolutely. And it is one of those things where, I think we've seen a lot at the top tables that we've looked at today. It does seem to be a lot of flexible drafting your right seat rather than necessarily forcing something. And I know that was a lot of people's discussion points as they came into this was, oh, I don't know if other people in my pot are going to force because that seems to be a semi-viable strategy back and forth. All right, so here we are. We're thinking. It looks like Jake's thinking about what to do on his go first. I mean, swinging Kakar is, rarely a bad option against New, but is it the best thing he can do? He's doing that calculation now.
And so we're starting with Water the Seeds. Just a nice 3-go again.
It's a good middle-of-the-road card on turn 0 where you have plenty of cards to pitch for resources and everything. You're probably a lot happier playing it out than you are necessarily in a later turn where maybe you want it to make a tiger rather than, have its more generic effect. Jake's still debating on his follow-up here.
And I really think about his arsenal, isn't he? He doesn't.
He is.
Yeah.
Well, we saw a pouncing key there. And, in a draft game, are you looking to arsenal your pouncing key, or are you looking to block with it, cycle with it, pitch with it, and then bring it back up with your Zen hero ability off of that chi? And it really depends on how much you've set up your deck to transcend.
Yeah. And of course, just throwing out one attack and then arsenaling, you really let your opponent cycle their hand there, which can be very dangerous into turn 1.
It can be. Although in this format, there's a lot of cards that just block awkwardly, that if you do that and they do it a little bit awkwardly, maybe you sense some weakness and you push forward. I think the other thing worth mentioning here is we've got some really nice equipment suites. Jake bringing a full set of cloaked equipment. We'll figure out what that is throughout the course of the game. And Callum bringing those phenomenally powerful Mystic Assassin equipments. They turn on Double Trouble single-handedly. Having that +1, having that go again, really helps manipulate exactly how you want your turn to shape up.
Absolutely. So we had a question in chat about whether this is draft or CC. So we are in the final 2 rounds of draft. So although Jake is bringing in the Marvel Zen, he is playing as young Zen, not adult Zen.
Yep. So
okay,
we've had a really big follow-up here. Deep Blue Sea, which gets +1 for each blue card that it's had in the banish zone. So I think that Kikoi went to block that Mist Blade previously. Yeah, so this doesn't have go again.
Yeah.
But hey, 7 damage is never bad on one card.
So, and being able to arsenal a card as well?
Absolutely. It's where you want to be, because a lot of times New shines on those 5-card hands. A lot of times those 3-card hands are really awkward, because you can use all your resources. You're pitching a blue, you're swinging the dagger, you're playing an attack, you're reacting to it, but it doesn't feel like you've done exactly what you want to do. When you have those 5 cards, you can really go wild.
Absolutely.
So Jake...
Just starting with a Kakara and just getting that armor block straight in really early.
Yeah, because you want to have those available on offense. Zen really doesn't... I think there's one on-hit from Zen, other than maybe Maul, but you're not using that for this. Or you're not using that armor for that.
Straight into Untamed.
So that'll buff up the next tiger. If a tiger comes in here, it'll be a nice big tiger, but we'll see if we can make it.
Absolutely.
Jake definitely took... Oh, it'll be a really big tiger if it comes in.
Wow.
Possibly a tiger for 3. You don't see that very often in draft, but we'll see if we see it. And if not, you know what? 1 for 4 go again is always good. Leg tap was a staple for a reason.
Absolutely. Oh, and the Majestic weakest link. So this may be difficult. What has the New got in hand? I can't quite see his hand there.
It looks like it blocks. Is that Gravekeeping and possibly something else? It looks like to me.
So he's not too worried about that.
You're not worried about the on-hit effect, but 6 life does really equal up those totals. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Gravekeeping and a yellow Bonds of Attraction there.
But still very equal on the life. Both heroes going very aggro here, so be interesting to see how much New can keep up with Zen on the aggro match.
Well, we saw there were some, those were 2 yellows. So, oh, well, there we go.
There you go.
Double trouble coming off from the jump. So the nice thing for Jake here is that he knows the amount of surprises that he should be expecting, which is presumably we're going to pitch something. It might be pitch, give go again with the boots, buff up double trouble, and then swing gravekeeping. Or we might just see it buffed up straight to 6 and then arsenal that last card. But it seems that these players are content to be trading big blows back and forth.
And certainly having that equipment there means it's very public information that he can get the 2 reacts, and certainly you wouldn't be doing that with 2 cards in hand unless you did have 2 good reactions, probably a hiss in there. Otherwise, you'd be pitching into the daggers. So it's very open play right now about what he's just trying to get the damage in, and Jake could block this for 6. It's very clear what's about to happen.
Yeah, you can figure out what Callum's lines are if you are Jake, and you did see that off the gravekeeping. But now the question is, what's the best way to mitigate it? Is it worth blocking the double trouble? If you commit 2 cards, is he still going to react even though double trouble doesn't specifically deal damage? There's a lot more math on the blocking side of this than there is on the attacking side of this.
And that's why New likes it. Make the opponent think more than you do.
Definitely. And some people gloss over that when it comes to draft because all of that new disruption is limited to the majestic and above tier in this set. But, in draft, the best disruption, on 20 life can just be 20 damage. You can just get there.
And there we go. Getting that sliver in to give it go again, making it a 5.
And then the fun question is, what comes off the top? Because it's 2 cards banished here. Once Jake takes that damage. Oh.
Okay. So he's not too worried about the transcend because the good thing is if New uses a transcend, it'll go back to Zen's hand. So generally, New does not like to transcend if they can possibly help it. But that tenet of chi.
The tenet of chi could definitely be useful. And the thing is, if you're confident in your ability to kill Zen, you don't care about giving them the chi. If you've done the math and you know you're coming in for lethal damage, they can't use that chi defensively very effectively at all. I guess theoretically they could turn Aqualapse face up if they really wanted to, or use it for Aqua Seeing Shell. But outside those very fringe scenarios, I think you might be happy doing that.
So Jake's just thinking about his outs here.
Yeah. So that weakest link has been banished to make sure that, if there is another Rising Sun Setting Moon in there, or sorry, not Rising Sun Setting Moon, a Preserved Tradition, that weakest link doesn't get cycled back because it's a tough card to see once. It can be backbreaking if you see it a second time at a more inconvenient time, to say the least.
Especially at the end when those transcends are going to be in hand.
Definitely.
Okay.
So Jake, once again, opting just to take all that damage and say, I can come back with something even better. And you know what? It looks like he can. He's going to have a tiger. He's going to transcend. It looks like that's a mauling chi in his hand. Maybe he can find that pouncing chi from earlier. If he can extend to find a second tiger somehow. Oh, no. He'll get it. He'll get one tiger off of this and then once again off Zen. So he will be able to basically double tiger combo this turn.
Absolutely.
Well, if that's the line he's taking.
Yep, it's coming in.
Yeah.
Seems like it's just got the perfect hand. Like, to draw that off fresh, you have to see it.
Or, you know what, he could just not. It looks like he's not opting to Zen here and is instead just going to be playing the tiger and pitching the homage into... Or I guess you could play the homage, gain 1 life, and then pitch it as a regular blue rather than activating your Zen ability. There we are. The line is making more sense now.
It's one over the top, down to 11.
Yeah. I am still slightly curious as to why he didn't play out the homage. Because it would transcend. It would still come to your hand as a blue. You can still use it for that reason. Maybe he's thinking the game's going to go a little bit longer. And he wants to save it as a surprise for later. Who knows?
And being at 4 health, leaving a new 2 cards, not too much new you can do with 2 cards, but still, you're a little bit scared here that you're going to have to start blocking out necessity rather than choice. So
Definitely.
you really need to think, how many turns left have I got in this game?
And I think that's why we saw those waves of Aquamarine be flipped face up here, because it's going to cover a dagger at the very least. It may cover something more awkward at best. And Jake has 2 more pieces of equipment that could be defensive. Having those Kikois can be absolutely fantastic, because 1 Kikoi perfectly counters a rousing wave, unless it's picked to pieces, that is. And Callum's now thinking through what may not be the turn he was hoping it to be.
A yellow bonds of memory. That's, yes. He's got a blue chakra in hand. It looks like he's going to be saving that.
Yeah, it's such a good starter, especially if you can transcend off the back of it. 0 for 3, go again, blue that blocks 3. Again, if you can transcend off the back of it. But it looks like he may not be able to, so he's happy blocking with it here. Doing the math on, well, which new reacts could it be, theoretically. Just a Nick is offline. Everything else really scary costs 1. The only other thing it could be, I think the only 0 cost would be Intimate Inducement, or if we get into the Grain that tips the scales, those generic mystics. Jake really
in the tank,
agonizing over it, and I think rightfully so. You're fighting to stay alive. You took 2 big gambles. You took a lot of damage to swing back a lot of damage. It worked out pretty well in your favor, and you're wondering, why has Callum chosen these 2 cards to hold? Is it because they pair very well together, or because he's coming in for a mediocre attack and then a good arsenal target?
And Callum's really made good use of his arsenal throughout the game, whereas Jake's really been playing hand to hand, which is partly the hero makeup of what you end up with this matchup. But it'll be interesting to see whether Jake does slow down a tiny bit just to get that arsenal just to close the game, or whether he's not willing to take that risk at this point in the game.
Well, that's exactly it. When life totals are this low, losing a card to then save an arsenal is always a gamble. So that Bonds of Memory banishing the Tide Chakra, or the Wind Chakra that blocked there, that's probably a card you're very happy giving to Callum, realistically speaking, because it's hard for them to make a Tiger, and if they do, it's only worth the 1, especially with what else is currently in that banish zone. So now Jake, he had all that thought on blocking. Now he knows what he's coming for on the offense, starting with the Nimblism, which won't affect the Kakara, but will affect the next attack, because it may matter in terms of, if you break the chain after the Kakara, you lose the buff on that hypothetical Tiger, whereas Nimblism will hit the next attack that you play this turn. And there's the Flex Clause. Ooh, and very well done. So now there's an awkward 7 to cover. If Flex Clause hits, he does get that Tiger, and that Tiger is now worth 1. So Zen's quite unique or very limited on-hit effects are becoming relevant here, and you do see it does pull out the Kikoi as well.
But Callum using the last of New's armor, so from out here on in, if he's blocking, it's going to be from hand.
Oh, that's exactly it. And it's, there's a lot of 3 go-agains in Zen decks. Callum has got 3 life. He may have to be prepared to give that up. Meanwhile, Jake has a little bit more flexibility in terms of what that armor may be able to offer.
Classic dagger for 1, go again. So Jake doesn't know what's in the arsenal. We know we're not too worried about it, but Jake will be. Okay, so we are using the equipment box now. Okay, so Desire of Flesh. So we know it's the chakra that's in the arsenal.
Yep. And you know what? If this does come through, it's probably going to net Callum a life, because for each attack action card that's banished, he's going to gain 1. So that's probably 1 off the top of the deck, and that's going to be 1 that gets banished from New's ability. So this card does have stealth, so New's ability, once the chain link resolves, will banish the defending action cards.
So activating a Arousing Wave to bring in the Fang Strike, but then the counters with equipment.
Kikoi, yeah.
And that is the value of equipment in this set. Really, those surprise reacts, it just allows you to respond to them and just close them up nice and cleanly.
And That's exactly it. When you see that arousing wave across the board, you know you're keeping one Kikoi for exactly that, because you're not letting that Desire of Flesh trigger come through, which I think we may have missed. I think that Wounding Blow should be banished.
Oh, of course, of course.
Wow. And using 2 fantastic non-attack action cards here to make what's going to be a very, very large Tiger.
And it's pretty close to New needing to block out now, so they are really grinding this game now as it slows down in the final steps. So it's about who can really close here.
Yeah. Oh. A lot of Mystic cards in Callum's hand. The question then becomes, how well do they block? So you know that one card in hand is going to be Tiger, and you know it will be coming in for 7 damage after this, which is pretty impressive. So 3 card, 9 damage this late in the game when your opponent's on 3 it's a good play that you want to be making.
Absolutely. And pretty soon, Zen's going to be coming in with those annoying breakpoints, which is really what you don't want to see once you're below 5 health. So,
okay. So
they're noticing now that the Wounded Blow should have been banished.
And more importantly, that it should gain 1 life off that Desires of Flesh as well.
Yes.
So I imagine... Well, they noticed it. We'll see what the resolution is in the long run.
Yeah.
Ooh, so we have a 2-block spillover. We have the 0-block/1 block drop in the ocean in Callum's hand. And I can't quite tell what that last one is. We have a Tenant, which blocks 3 quite nicely, which is very nice. And then, is that last one a Deep Blue Sea or a Big Blue Sky? There's a lot of blue, and it's all very pretty, but I can't quite make it out from where I am.
No. Just a bit of glare from the cameras there. It's fine. We'll see it in good time.
Yes.
Okay, so a Tiger for 7, and that's the biggest I've seen a Tiger.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's
Great play from Jake.
Yeah, ninjas are making good use of non-attack actions. So here, drop in the ocean, unfortunately, being used to block, well, to reduce the power of an attack by 1 with no transcend on the back end of it, because all of those blue cards were defended with rather than being played. So the turn is just passed back.
Okay, and New's just drawn straight back up. So now you're leaving Zen with a 4-card hand, and I can see a transcend in New's hand. So this could become awkward fast. I can see he's at 2 hisses in hand.
That's what it looks like.
Ooh.
And a double trouble.
Oh, it was a hiss and a venomous strike. So, okay. So
now, this is the card you would love to see 3 turns ago when you have 10 life still.
Absolutely. But too late in the game for this, and we are coming through with a Harmony of the Hunt blue, which is great because it will allow Jake to transcend. And at this point, I think he really needs to create those breakpoints.
Interesting that Jake is choosing not to play grain that tips the scale yet here. It looks like Callum already reached over for that life. Oh, okay, there we go.
There it comes in. There we go.
Yeah, all right. Looks like he was told to take a pause there. So good target. It's going to reduce Callum to 1. And it transcends, so we can, find something really nice, surely. There's lots of things left in this deck, and at the very least, it makes a Tiger and leaves as much to swing that Tiger Taming Kakara, which, at this point, anything's a breakpoint, anything's lethal. Kakara into Tiger is a fantastic 2-resource attack.
And of course, New close to the game by playing the opponent's cards, whereas Zen just looks in a deck and brings out the best attack.
Yeah.
Why play your opponent's cards when you just play your own?
Yeah, self-reliance rather than reliance on others. It truly is the deck of the self-made person.
Okay. Jake's just deciding what he wants to do.
Probably just thinking at this point about chain optimization, figuring out, what's the most annoying way I can swing for 4 instead of 3, or for 2 and 1 instead of 3.
Yeah. Really
breaking it out to make sure. I think Jake, if he knew that there was a no block in Callum's hand, would just be going, oh, you know what, I have enough attacks. This'll do. But sometimes when you got to play around that 4th card in hand, the math becomes a lot more of a challenge.
Yeah, and if you want to maintain your place for the top 8, you really do need to optimize every single point of value. So I can completely understand why you're slowing down here, making sure you choose the right card. We don't know the deck lists, but certainly we have seen most of the cards now. It does seem to be like we're cycling back around.
So it's a blue Key Unleashed, which is, I feel like in this scenario you probably want one of the ones with Go again, or something that doesn't cost 2, because a lot of times if it costs 2, you're choosing between the Kakara or playing out the Chi Unleashed. We'll see how it goes, though. You know, there's still 3 cards in hand. I mean, we know 2 of them are Tigers, but the damage probably gets there in the end.
And even having to block 1 Tiger feels bad. You do not want to be doing it, especially at this stage of the game. You just want to be throwing something back. And
here it is.
To see all these reactions have to be used for blocks, it's heartbreaking. Okay.
And there we go.
There we go. Yep. And that finishes the game. So Jake wins it.
Very well done. And a really nice back and forth between these 2 heroes. I think, you know, they both had some really fun haymaker turns that they got to play in there.
And I felt like New was just 1 turn off getting that pivotal turn to be able to close the game and force Zen to block. We saw New was doing a lot of the blocking there, but really it was only about 1 react off just forcing Zen to block for life as well. So a very close game. And
that's exactly it. That's why Flesh and Blood really is a game of inches. And when you start with so much less runway in a 20 life format, it goes really, really quickly. You know, you can only really afford 1 or 2 of those no block turns. As we saw, each of those 2 had it. And it could have been, you know, something, you know, if that 2-card hand from New was tighter than just yellow Bonds of Memory, you know, if you could push 5 damage off of that, that would have been phenomenal. That would have turned the tide of the game, but that's just how, you know, that's how the cards flip sometimes. And, you know, it's always exciting to see the back and forth.
Absolutely. So we've got 1 more round for day 1. So the players are really building up for that just final round to push through to be able to carve out their spot in day 2. So yes, I believe we'll be moving over to an interview with Jake, and we'll close it off there. We'll see you later, guys, for the next round.